Adventures in Retouching with Rob DiCaterino.
Welcome to Adventures in Retouching. I'm Rob DiCaterino, and I am joined today by my guest, colleague, fellow retoucher, photographer, Bogdana Ferguson. Welcome to Adventures in Retouching, Bogdana.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Where are you, Bogdana?
I'm quarantining in Park Slope with my husband in Brooklyn. It's very nice and quiet here, which I love.
So you're in Brooklyn. I'm quarantining still in New Jersey. So we're East Coast.
Okay.
Keeping busy and staying positive and staying safe, which is important.
Yes, very much so.
So very good. So let's jump right in. Bogdana, can you walk me through your background, starting from the beginning, your education and your work experience up to right now?
Sure. So I actually studied art for many years. I took extracurricular art classes when I went to regular school, which was basically 10 years of education. Again, that was not like every day, 100% just art, but it gave me a lot of basis for what I do now in photography, as well as, retouching, absolutely. So I studied for a while, just painting, drawing, whatever. And then I went on to university where I studied. My official undergraduate course was interior design, but I actually did not get into much of that because I'm a college dropout twice. So I did ended up mostly studying the first years of it, which was like graphic design and a lot of that. So again, I feel like it just kind of compiled knowledge and also, again, foundation of using Photoshop and stuff like that. But then even prior to that, while I was a teen, my dad actually was the one who introduced me to Photoshop. He was, for some reason, obsessed. And he was just on forums all day, every day. And he was the one who just put me in front of a computer and was like, hey, like, here, study. And it was really fun. I mean, at first it felt like a chore because I didn't understand what he was trying to put me in front of and what it meant, but it actually ended up being super interesting. And so that's kind of how I started. And then when I moved here, which was 6 years ago, to the US, that's when I started picking up photography some more because I had some friends and I was helping them, sometimes retouching some images, sometimes I was just assisting them. And so then I just started getting into photography myself. And through that, I found an internship as a photographer who is like a fashion photographer who did all sorts of magazines and stuff. And I did retouching for him, the magazines. And that's just kind of how it all started, slowly but surely. And then my last major work experience was 2 years at a small media company, which was awesome because I was a photographer there, a staffer, but because it's media, because it's small, I kind of like had to do it all. So I retouched 100% of all the content that went on to the website. It's called Dore, D-O-R-E. We are Dore is the URL. So even anything that freelancers did, I was retouching, processing, as well as photographing most of the content. But between that, I was picking up freelance jobs for underwear companies and just doing a bunch of e-com retouching specifically, and cosmetics companies. So I was kind of like haphazard. So while my like main focus of work is photography, retouching was always just very much a major part of it.
So Bogdana, can you explain how you ended up like why retouching, why photography, why visual arts and not like I'm going to be a doctor or a teacher or a mail carrier? Like why visual arts?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's a good question. I think that's just the best thing that I know. It's one thing that I know for sure that I can do because I just spent my whole life doing it. Um, and while sometimes I kind of imagine myself doing other things, like, I don't know, studying literature and going on to be a teacher or something, um, sometimes I just feel like this is what I know, and I should just probably stay in my lane and kind of just perfect to the best of my ability all the skills that I have. But it's also just fascinating. I mean, you basically create the images that people see, and it's such a huge part of the culture. And I don't mean because of Instagram, um, just the way we sighted people perceive world. Um, it's such a huge part of our lives.
I know a lot of photographers who they might dabble in Photoshop a little bit and retouching a little bit, but they're photographers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm a photographer, lighting and focal lengths and aperture.
Mm-hmm.
But you were really equal in both. You're a very strong retoucher. So how did that? How come you didn't end up as like I'm the photographer, and you ended up being very strong in both?
I think because I started using Photoshop much earlier than I started doing photography. I had a good foundation of doing it, and then I just saw through assisting some of my friends and who were doing just plainly photography. I just saw how important that was, that second part of it, which basically is everything. I always say that when you on a photo shoot, like your style as a photographer actually comes out when you've done your edit and when all the images are finished. Because you can do all kinds of images while you're in process. You can do all kinds of styles, all kinds of poses and everything. Um, but it's what you do with it afterwards that matters. So I have a very hard time trusting anybody else to do retouching. Same as going for the website that I worked at. I never trusted any other photographers that did work for us who were specifically just photographers to do that kind of retouching because you just it's like polishing. It's polishing of your work, and it's so important. And it's just not, I mean, I guess it just depends also on the personality. I mean, you know it as a retoucher yourself. It's just such a different and calming, and so you need so much attention and dedication to the process of retouching that not every person can have the nerve to just sit all day and stare at a screen.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. So it sounds like you're saying when you are in photographer mode and you're shooting,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't feel like the process is complete until then afterwards you've done the second half where now you go in, you edit, and you do the retouching and you finish it.
Yeah, it's like a gift without a gift wrapper. It's just not the same.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's a good way to put it. I agree. How do you feel about any non-Adobe software like Corel Painter or DaVinci Resolve, Cinema 4D, any of the Topaz stuff or Affinity Photo? Or
I like Photoshop. There are so many features. I mean, I can do everything that I need to do in Photoshop, Lightroom, and I guess the only other program that I use is Capture One, but that's again, it's more like the initial color. It's great for that. But I mean, I do use some, if it's just on my phone and some kind of images that are just random, like personal images that I take. There's some pretty good apps I feel like on the iPhone that are good for that. But yeah, I usually don't branch out and too many other programs.
so speaking of Photoshop,
Mm-hmm.
what are your main tools? What are your favorite tools?
I love Dodge and Burn. I feel like you can just use it for anything, at least for most things. Again, for shooting fashion and beauty. I even had some iPhone images sent to me to better them in Photoshop, and I just used it. It's such a great tool, and it's non-destructive, so you leave the pictures perfect, and you can always go back. But then most that I use would be, things that you just use for skin retouching, like patch and not much clone, but I guess like healing brush, and just as many layers as you can add them, and the mask.
So what are some other fundamental, really important things for someone just beginning as a retoucher? Like, and I ask this because there's 500 different things that you can do in Photoshop. So instead of someone just starting out, instead of getting distracted with all 500 things, what are the core things that a beginner needs to know and master before moving on to the other 500 things?
Oh gosh, yeah, I know. It's such a vast body of knowledge that once you open that can of worms, there's no going back. But I think in the beginning, before you go into dodge and burning and all that kinds of stuff, I feel like the most important is just know the basics of visual art in general. Just studying composition, colors, and how they work together. And especially in the digital sphere, it's very different from where you take a paintbrush and do it yourself. So like, I think you really need to understand it. And it depends on what kind of retouching you want to do. I guess speaking from my experience, beauty, and fashion, studying even basic principles of human anatomy, I think is important, because I've seen many, I guess like amateur makeup artists would do the same mistakes when you just see bronzer, but like a version of bronzer, just dark layers in Photoshop, like of cheekbones somewhere over here that just don't exist. Like you really need to understand how the human body works and what could be realistic, what not, because you can always later if you need to, but just keeping it simple at first. And I love to start to explain to interns different adjustment layers with levels and curves, and kind of starting there and just seeing maybe like, instead of very detailed retouching, how can you look at the photo as a whole, and if it's an object, how can we bring it up forward so it really stands out. Maybe you need to darken the background, maybe you need to remove some clutter from there, maybe you don't need specifically do anything crazy with the product itself. It's just identifying what's the most important things are.
Yeah, so visually, I try to explain to people being able to get to a point as a retoucher where you open up a photo and you're just automatically visually deconstructing the image, like just analyzing, like, okay, I'm analyzing within seconds. I'm analyzing, because there's things that as an experienced retoucher, you get the hang of, like, there's just things that immediately, like, oh, I have to clean up that highlight. The background needs to be darkened a little here. This needs to pop. That needs to be. So yeah, those basics, like you said, the basics of just visual arts and composition and color and anatomy and but also layers and adjustment layers and masks and everything.
That comes with time. That you can always learn. That's the thing that I feel like, same as with anything, you can always learn the small parts of like technology and stuff like that. It just you need to get like a little bit of a bigger picture at first. But do you ever have that experience after a long day of retouching when you go on with your life and you either go outside or you look at, sometimes I have that when you talk to somebody and you start doing the same thing with people in real life? Yes.
Yes.
You start to okay, like here I could use a patch to remove this.
like a building, or oh, if I could just clean up that wall, like why is there a stain there,
Oh
or
my
this
God.
tree, there's a bare spot in the tree, if I could just patch that in and make it, like in real life, like hair holes or hair
Yeah.
gaps, or it's
Oh
like,
my
yeah, I
God,
know.
yeah.
So and not in a like judgy critic,
Oh no.
like I'm making fun of you, you're ugly, I need to fix you. Like, no, it's not that. It's just a habit. It's just like,
Yeah.
hey, there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfectly fine, just the way you are. It's just the mentality that I'm in right now. It's just habit. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny, actually. That's a good question. How about on someone's website, like a portfolio website, if someone's just starting out, again, to go back to what you said earlier about you're working with interns and people beginning, if people are applying like an entry level, junior level retoucher position, and you're looking at their websites, what are things like do's and don'ts that, oh, I like this, don't put that, this is good, this is bad, this turns me on, this turns me off?
I think you need to get at least as close as possible to the right balance of under-retouch versus over-retouch. I mean, I guess it's better to lean into under-retouched versus over, but then it might look like you didn't do anything. So I understand why people want to put as much as possible, but I guess having examples of before and after would be huge, because you can actually judge what was done. But I definitely would advise against over-retouching. I think it's such a no-no.
Yeah, can you speak more about so what is over retouching, and how do you avoid over retouching, or how did you learn to avoid that?
I think it probably comes with time once you learn better tools. So for instance, instead of like when I was 14 years old, I edited images was just applying Gaussian blur and erasing everything around it on that layer. I didn't even know how to use masks. So then you got these like weird lumps of just blurry substance on the photo. So I think by then finding out, oh wait, like you can do frequency separation, but then that is also maybe not the best tool, and then you go on to different ones. I think over-retouching is just too many things in the image when you have too many layers with like darker, like again, like people do contouring of faces that is just so unnatural and can never occur in real life on a real skin. Some that was a long time ago, but the fake eyelash brushes in Photoshop, that used to be a thing, and I'm sure there are now its own versions. Basically anything that makes it look like you put a photo in the Facetune app and that's what you got is just better to avoid it. Subtlety is key. Just paying attention to whatever is around you too, in campaigns and advertisement, and kind of seeing what other people are doing helps.
So Bogdana, when you see like a beauty image where it's a close up of a face, and it's the purpose is to sell cosmetics, makeup, and you see like perfect pores, there's not a single flaw, it's all absolute perfection. That's not reality, right? That's fantasy. But is that over retouching, or is that okay?
It is a hard issue. I feel like it changes now with culture. I think that maybe a few years ago would say, no, it's absolutely fine. But now some people perceive it as still, while it doesn't look amateur, it looks super, super professional, but it still is unattainable by definition. I honestly love that look. I think it's beautiful. While yes, it is fantasy, I think it depends on the purpose too. I don't mind when it's images of makeup and you have the perfect skin with tiny little pores, and I think it just does its function well of drawing your attention to the product that you have on. But I feel like with skincare, I know why people do it, but it's a little bit more complicated because you basically sell in the product, promising that you would look like this, and nobody will ever look like this. And it's a bit of a false advertisement, but you know, same is done with hair commercials um,
And food.
and food.
Too.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Using glue instead of mayo and stuff. I guess it depends on the company too. There's some companies that do photography with very little professional lighting. They just use some natural light and hardly retouch any photos, and they're very successful. It depends, but I mean, I love that look of just very, very clean, kind of like perfect alien skin.
So you're saying there's a time and a place, right? For
Absolutely, yeah. It's very nuanced, I feel like.
now, how about again over-retouching and the fantasy and all of that stuff? You know what? Like you said, it's advertising, it's fantasy, it's selling, right? It's selling products and you know, hey, before photography was used in advertising, there were paintings and illustration. Well, a painting's going to be a fantasy. It's going to be an idealized version. Look how fun these people are having, and look how perfect the car looks, or whatever. And there's a time and a place, but does it ever go into what I call dangerous retouching? Is there such a thing as dangerous retouching?
I think there absolutely is such thing, and especially people's bodies are getting morphed into these shapes that no human on Earth can ever achieve. That evolution just did not foresee us in 2020 going with women being this thin in the waist and this big in thighs. It just there are some people who have these bodies naturally, but it's a very, very tiny percentage. And the same, of course, goes for men with overgrown muscle or something. I think whenever it goes into the territory of basically making other people feeling super bad about themselves, it's not okay. But then again, if it's our bodies always morph and change and move when we move and take all kinds of shapes. So if it's something somebody's holding their arm like this and it just looks too kind of like flat and bulky against their body, I think it's okay to change it a bit because their arm is not actually that shape. It just took on that shape. So I think we have to find balance in everything, basically. Balance is key.
Bogdana, what is retouching, and what does that mean to you? What is retouching?
To me, just polishing of an image to the level that you want it to be, not necessarily perfection. So it doesn't always have to be about removing the wrinkles on somebody's face. I think it's just basically like a painting. You can paint with so many different techniques. And same as here, it's just whatever you want to get in the end. Or also just fixing imperfections of the camera technology itself, because our eyes don't see the way cameras do ever. So we kind of have to always find a compromise.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good point. Our eyes don't see the way that a camera sees. People don't realize that. Depending on the focal length, the distance, the aperture, there's distortions, there's elongations or stretching or barrel distortion or
So retouching is so much more. That's what I get so annoyed when people say airbrushing instead of retouching. It doesn't exist. What do you think it is? Is it just like one tool that you like smooth over the image? It just doesn't work. There's so many layers to it, and it doesn't always mean any kind of skin work at all. It's just basically removing some things that you think are imperfections and polishing it up. So.
How have you evolved as a retoucher? And also, what what helped you evolve as a retoucher?
Um, a lot in terms of education. My best tool was always YouTube. That honestly helped me to learn everything that I know. But just hours of work, honestly, just sitting down. I remember first image that I tried to retouch was Dodge and Burn. Took me 10 hours. It was just crazy. It was insane. I thought that this was going to be just my whole life. Like, does that mean that every image will take so long? And no, then you better yourself and I mean, sometimes it probably does. It depends. Um, but just hours of work and noticing what trends there are too. I mean, it might seem counterproductive when you start doing retouching job because you think that the more you retouch it, the better you are. But actually, then finding that balance between too much and just enough is key. But there's so much room for improvement always.
On that note, do you ever go back and relook at any old work? And if so, how does it make you feel to look at your old work?
I think it makes just as anybody else, it makes me laugh. If you look especially like at very old work, or the beginnings when I did not know that I was even gonna do retouching or Photoshop, like when I was years ago, before I started doing photography myself, when I was helping my friend retouch her wedding images or something, and she showed me this tool in Lightroom that was I don't know what it's called, but like a circular thing that you put and like you make like an oval shape, and it's a mask basically. And so I basically created these like halos of light around all the people, and I thought this was so cool. But of course, then time goes on, you learn to be better. But yeah, old work. I mean, you have to look at this because you need to see where it came from. I feel like it's nothing shameful about it.
What are some things that make your life as a retoucher easier and more pleasant and just more efficient and happy?
So good lighting in photography and just good photos. That definitely makes the world of difference when somebody gives you a perfectly lit photo. There's all the saturation the way it needs to be and the color corrected to a good point when you can start with it. That's just wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, hey, there's the old expression, garbage in, garbage out. If you start off with something bad, right, then there's only so much you can do with it. You can't work miracles. But like you're saying, if you start off with something already very good, look at how even much better we can make it, right? So it's like the
Yeah,
opposite. It's like good in, good out.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of people who don't do retouching just don't realize how much we depend on it. Um, so they would give you any kind of photo they have and be like, hey, like make it look like cover of Vogue. Um, but of course you can't if it doesn't look like a cover of Vogue from the beginning.
Right. Yeah, I shot this in my basement and all the lights were turned off and I used
Yeah.
my old flip phone. Can you make it look like the cover of Vogue? It's like,
Nope, I
no,
can't.
that's
I'm
not.
sorry.
I'm very flattered that you think that's how this works and I'm honored, but unfortunately that's not how this works. So,
Yeah. I was once asked to do this retouching job of old catalog images of some bathing suits, and it was shot with, I mean, it looked like amateur photo camera on the beach on different rocks, and it felt like it was midday, so the light was super super harsh, and you could see like when the person lifted their hand, the shadow would just cover their half of their body. um, and they asked me to transfer all of it onto a white background as if it was shot in studio. And I mean, there was also, the hair thing. What do you do about that? Like, how do you select all of it? And I mean, besides just the lighting, of course, I ended up not doing the job. It was just too ridiculous. But yeah, people think that it's super possible. I mean, it's possible, but it will not look good. That's
That's
the
true.
key
Yeah.
element that clients need to understand.
Right. Yes. So as a photographer, as a professional photographer, and also a professional retoucher, how does the retouching part of your career affect your photography? Like when you're shooting, do you have like what's going through your mind?
Um, yeah, I definitely think of that all the time. I think you have to, um, on a level of casting, for example, you have to think of different things because before the shoot, once you see the person in a photo, it's one thing, but then you have to imagine the right kind of lighting so that then later when you're retouching it, that could be also done much easier than it would be if you picked the wrong kind of lighting or situation. Um, I mean, skin is a big part of what I retouch just naturally because of the nature of my job. So I have to definitely think of those things. If somebody has larger pores or some blemishes, imperfections, you have to kind of balance that light and diffuse it a bit so it doesn't look too harsh. If it's in the midday sun, that could just look so much more enlarged and strange, and so you kind of have to always plan for that.
Who sees the images that you work, like when you finish a project or a job or batch of photos,
Mm-hmm.
they go out into the world. Who sees those photos? Who's the audience? I just think that's interesting too, because people don't really think about, like, I worked on a photo. It's like,
Right.
who sees this?
Who's this for? um, well, I can say for my last job, just that I know for sure. um, the media company, DeRay, it was an audience of women from all over the world. It was a company that was started by a French woman, so naturally there was a heavy presence of EU readers. And then later, um, when she came to the US, it became largely US audience readers. But honestly, it's such a vast category, obviously mostly women, but the age could go from teenagers to 60-year-olds. I guess just whoever is interested in lifestyle and fashion and beauty content. Um, but it was fun to see. It was fun to see who was responding to what. And I gotta say that the most well-received stories were the ones with, um, even if they were models, they looked more closer to real people, which is funny because sometimes people will say, oh, it's so nice to see non-model in the editorial, when in reality it is a model. It's just of different kind. Maybe it's a plus size, maybe, could be a disabled person. But people see those as vastly different for some reason still. But that same principle of less is more definitely always um, won the love of people.
Yeah. You know why I ask this question is like, who sees your photos? Who's the audience? Is because a lot of times as retouchers, we're just in a dimly lit room somewhere in an
Mm-hmm.
office or photo studio in the back, and like once in a while someone pops in, but like we're not in the mix, we're not on set, we're not like the cool
Yeah.
hot shots and getting all the glory. We're the behind the scenes, like secret people. But I remind my teams and my colleagues and everything, I like to ask this question because it's like, yeah, you know what, the work that we do as retouchers, that goes out to, like, you know, like you said, people all over the country, all over the world, all
Yeah.
ages. There's millions and millions of people seeing our work every day. And that's cool. I think that, I don't know, I find that very cool. And it's like, how many people get to say that?
Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
cool thing.
I find it very unfair, the hierarchy in this world of commercial photography in general, when one person who gets the credit is a photographer, when in reality there's so many people who are working on it. And then, I mean, retouchers are a huge part of it, but also what about art directors, for example?
That's right. Yeah, it's absolutely a collaboration. It's a multi-team effort. I mean, it has to be,
Yeah.
right? You're talking about huge photo shoots, whether it's on location, whether it's in a professional photo studio, the cover of a magazine. I mean, that's a big deal. That's going out. That's getting printed hundreds of thousands of times. It's going on newsstands. It's going on billboards. It's going. So naturally, something that serious, that major, it's not going to be one person. It has to be a multi-team collaboration. There were producers and makeup, hair and makeup artists and stylists and merch people and like you said, like location scouts and model casting people and but yeah, it's
Yeah.
we're the secret people and you know what?
Special agents.
That's why I want to ask your opinion. So retouchers are the secret behind the scenes people. We're in the dimly lit room off to the side. And is there a certain type of person or a certain type of personality that's better suited to be a retoucher?
I think definitely, even just from hearing other people look at me and think that I'm crazy when I'm at work, for example, coming up to the screen and just saying things like, oh, I would never be able to do that. You definitely have to be very, you should be fine with being by yourself for long periods of time and being okay with that, and was just sitting and being quiet and still. It doesn't always mean, I mean, I don't think that it's necessarily only like a job for shy people and quiet. I guess it's just for those who are okay with it, because you certainly have to spend hours of work just kind of not moving much and just being in your zone. Um, yeah, that just could not work for everyone.
How do you know when you've become a good retoucher?
I think you need to ask your tribe. I think you really have to get a feedback. It doesn't mean that you have to always look for validation from other people, but just to check in with people who have a trained eye, who've been in the industry for a very long time. Um, I think it's very important to ask that, because, I mean, we can do all kinds of judgments, but it's good to have a reality check once in a while.
Bogdana, if you weren't a retoucher and if you weren't a photographer, what would you be doing?
You know, actually, just remember, when I was in high school, I think I was contemplating maybe going to journalism school. So maybe I would do that. I don't know. But it just seemed incredibly interesting job.
Yeah, and important too.
Yeah, incredibly important.
Do you have any retouching projects that you're or memories that you're proud of or just fond of?
When I did work for the photographer, and I was interning there for a while, and when he entrusted the big task of processing all the images for print, that felt very huge. I felt very proud of myself. It was certainly fun, and yeah, I still remember those jobs, and will cherish them for a while.
Do you use any of the mobile versions like Photoshop on the iPad or Lightroom or
Mostly just, it's called Photoshop Fix, that one. Where you have like no blemish or something, you want to remove it, or sometimes just like garbage on the street and I want to remove from my photo. But yeah, I think it's nice that they made those versions very decent, I feel like, for like a cell phone user.
Bogdana, where do you see the retouching industry going in the future?
I mean, I feel like if we have the technology of deep fakes, we're probably not that far from computers being very intelligent about what is in that image and what, so they could actually read it as close as possible to our human eyes. So it might be that you could, I mean, you already kind of can do it when you can go to Facetune and even out all your skin automatically. But I don't think they will ever be so close to what an actual living person can do.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see what
But
happens.
I don't think humans will be fully replaced for like art photography and fashion, for more like artistic projects. I don't think a machine can really do something, I suppose, because it can't read your mind. So you really need a person to be present for it.
Yeah, there's just the artistic aspect of it and serendipity and you know, I've worked with so many creative directors and art directors and graphic designers back in my print days that it's like a situation where it's like, okay, so what would you like me to do to this photo for the, like, I don't know, I'll know it when I see it.
Right.
It's like, oh,
right.
okay, well then the
Yeah.
computer can't do that, so
Yeah,
so we're
that's
okay
a very good
for
point.
Bogdana, what do you envision for your own future? Do you stay in retouching, photography, visual arts? Do you pivot to journalism or something? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I really hope to stay in visual arts for as long as I can. Of course, right now it's a little bit harder with just physically being unable to take many photos, although there are some better technologies that are coming up for remote shoots. I just think we should all be responsible and anticipate that it's gonna be a while for Miss Corona to leave us, so we just have to be prepared. But I feel like even then, I'll probably stay within visual arts and either do retouching with some other work, other people's work, or graphic design, and I don't know, we'll see. But I mean, in the ideal future, I would definitely just continue doing the same. I think it's just so much fun.
Do you have any funny stories or funny memories, funny times from being a retoucher or visual artist?
I think I was reminded of this experience yesterday when I opened the cut, and they had this story about underwear, something, and I was like, oh my god, I know this, but and it's because it's an underwear company and it's e-com. I've spent multiple contracts editing the same exact person over like a couple of years, right? Like on and off. And so I just know that body so well that like within seconds, my brain just went, oh my God, this is it.
So you can recognize someone just by the butt. That's
yes,
pretty.
I spent a lot of time with it, so I know it well.
That is great. That's great. That's so yeah. So hey, for our viewers, right? This is what it is being a retoucher. you, especially if you work with the same group of models, you get to know them very intimately, very up close and personal, and
Very, yes.
all their quirks and their chin and their nose, and I mean, yeah, that's how it is being a retoucher. That's fun.
Yeah, very much so. The only other people who know people so strangely well is only probably like plastic surgeons or somebody who's like the other profession whose job is to just look at you under magnifying glass.
Again, not that there's something wrong with the person that we have to change, and I don't mean it in that sense. I just mean
Yeah,
like, getting to know someone that intimately and making adjustments to things that,
yeah, of course.
someone once put it to me like, hey, I love this person. She's a great person. He's a great person. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just maybe they had a pimple that day. Maybe they had flyaway hairs that day.
Yeah.
I'm helping them look like how they look like on a good day.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Okay, also, when you look at a person, you just don't notice so many things about them. It's the camera's fault, basically, that is getting so well, like that no normal human eye will ever see. And I feel like that's just our job, to make it look as natural as possible, as normal as possible.
Do you have any final thoughts or other final bits of advice for our viewers? Anything I forgot, or just anything else you want to say in closing?
In closing, I'm very grateful to you for having me here. It's been a real pleasure talking about those things, especially that, as I mentioned in the email when we were talking about it, that not many people would enjoy this conversation. I think if you are starting out in retouching, just patience is key, as with anything, and that's about as much wisdom as I have to share with the world.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Bogdana.
Thank
Where can
you,
people
Rob.
find you online? Where do you live online?
So my website is bogdanaferguson.com. So BOGDAN as in CAFERGUSON.com. And my Instagram is the Bogdana, BOGDANA. Long name. Let's forget how to spell it verbally.
Very good. So yeah, I'll put links in the YouTube description and on adventuresinretouching.com, and so people can go view your work and reach out to you and everything. So this was so wonderful, Bogdana. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob.
You're welcome. You're welcome. This has been Adventures in Retouching. I'm Rob DiCaterino. Do me a favor, it helps me out. So like, subscribe. It's YouTube. You know what to do. And you know what? Be bold if you have questions or you have advice or any little tidbits that you want to add. Leave comments. Get in touch with me. Email me. I'm here to help. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.